and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Kids County. Hello, Oregon. Hello, America and beyond. I'm feeling very patriotic. I'm at the Republican headquarters. I'm with my good friend here. Yes, my good friend, the American Eagle. And so we're going to have a really good show. I got an interview that we did last week. It was last Friday. I talked to Nich Stark. I promised you we would talk to Nich Stark, and he's going to tell you about the ins and outs of the legislation that was just passed, that huge tax package, and how we're going to repeal this. And we're going to need your help. This is going to be a very, very informative interview. And I'm at the headquarters right now, the Republican headquarters, and anyone out there who hasn't signed the petition for the vote before tolls petition or the end vote by mail petition, we have those petitions here. We'll be here till 6 o'clock. We're going to be here Tuesday, and we will be here Wednesday, 2 to 6. Yep, Marty's here. Getting those signatures. We don't have the actual repeal yet. That's going to happen probably around the 12th, the 15th, somewhere around there. It's going to, if she signs it on the 12th, that's what she has until the time she has to do it. And we will get that out by the 15th. And then we have 30 days, folks, 30 days to get this done. I'm going to put this interview on, and hopefully it all works well. And I got a chance to interview Nich Stark. He is the executive director of the Oregon Freedom Coalition, and he's kind of spearheading, not kind of, he's doing it. He's spearheading this horrible tax package repeal that was passed upon us by the legislature in the last special session that was called by the governor, Tina Kotek. And I'm going to let him explain to us what is the, well, Nich, thank you for joining us. And tell us, what is the Oregon Freedom Coalition, and how is that what does that have to do with the no tax on Oregon?
Yeah, so Oregon Freedom Coalition, very simply, is a 501c4 that is designed to reclaim freedom and prosperity in our state. Something that we very much have lost out on over the last 4 decades, and something that, you know, with everything that's going on, some of the cool things that the Trump administration is doing and whatnot, you know, we kind of missed the boat on a few things, given just how our leadership in this state positions itself against freedom and prosperity. So the backstory, just a little bit, if you want it, is that about 2 years ago now, we've been an organization for about a year, and that year has just flown by insanely fast. So it's now 2 years ago. Representative Ed Deal and I had a conversation just discussing, you know, what does it take to kind of fix Oregon and reclaim Oregon? Because when you talk to people on the street, there's a lot of people that are conservative that just don't like what's going on in Salem, don't like the progressive bent and how they've lost out on freedom and prosperity over the last 4 decades, and particularly within the last 10 years, 10, 15 years or so. And we had both come to the same conclusion that what we need to do is build out a conservative infrastructure that runs, you know, as its own kind of effort and machine to really push conservative policies. You know, not Republican policies, I should say. It's, we are nonpartisan, but we stand firm on conservative principles and ideals, these ideas of free markets, limited government, just this freedom and prosperity idea that I keep talking about. And we had both come to that conclusion separately, and we were, at an event that my former employer was hosting, and just discussing what does it take, and realized we came to the same conclusion. And it took about a year, but we started this effort, the Oregon Freedom Network broadly, which under the umbrella of that is the Oregon Freedom Coalition, the 501c4, and then the Oregon Freedom Foundation, our sister organization, the 501c3. And it's designed, we used coalition specifically because our thought process is we want to build grassroots coalitions and professional coalitions, have everybody on the same page to help advance good policy goals and to fight some of the bad stuff that's coming out. So one of the efforts that we're that we are using for that is this No Tax Oregon. And I can keep going. I don't know if you want to ask questions, within that, but I could keep just talking.
Yeah, I'll have a lot of questions, but let's go ahead. You were going so smoothly there. You should continue that on, because I'm going to put up the home No Tax Oregon, because you were rolling right into that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, and feel free to, just whenever you want to stop me on a point, feel free to do so. I can circle back around as needed. But No Tax Oregon was an idea that we got based off of something that actually was going on in New Mexico. So some allies of ours in New Mexico used No Tax NM, No Tax New Mexico, to fight a bad tax package. And they were super successful. And I probably should have you cut that out, because I think that's probably not exactly specific to what we want to talk about here with No Tax Oregon. But No Tax Oregon was an idea that we came up with early in the year, when we knew that there was going to be tax cut or tax increases on the horizon. And we designed it specifically to fight bad tax proposals, tax increases. But really, it's transformed into something that we want to use as a vessel for long-term tax reform. So right now, what you see it as is geared towards, protecting folks from this devastating gas tax and fee hikes, and the payroll hikes as well, payroll tax hikes, I should say. But really, it's, I'm kind of a purist, a tax purist when I think about it. That's my background. I used to work for the American Legislative Exchange Council, and I handled their tax and fiscal policy stuff. And a lot of that was geared towards, you can be a state with no income tax, and you're far more prosperous than all these other states that have high income taxes. And if you have high income taxes, your economic outlook, as Jonathan Williams, who I worked with at ALEC, used to say, that the economic outlook was abysmal if you had high income tax rates specifically. So that leads to things like people moving with their feet, picking up from, it was how we turned the way that we did. We turned so progressive was that people were picking up out of California and moving here, because, sometimes just a little marginally better is better than, what we're sitting in. And so Oregon happens to be that state. And then when they realize that it's, just as bad here as it is in California, they pick up and move to places like Idaho, that are just sky high, looking really good on their economic outlook. And so my vision for this No Tax Oregon effort is one day no income tax in Oregon. It's as simple as that. And there's a lot of work we have to do on, we can't just cut the rates immediately. We can't just go from, whatever, what it is now to zero overnight. We have to do a lot of spending reform in the process too. We have to create a lot of accountability in agencies. Agencies like ODOT, we have to look at, are they really functioning to the full force and efficiency that they could be? And I would say the answer is no. And I got berated one time when I was talking about this of, there's a lot of good people that work in ODOT. You shouldn't say it's just pure and utter incompetency. And I think that's probably true. There's a lot of well-intentioned people that work for these agencies. But the problem that we have writ large is that there's bad leadership across the board. And particularly, there's bad leadership in Salem that do not do the things necessary to keep agencies like ODOT accountable and on mission and effective and efficient. And so we get to problems like what we have today, where we have this budget crunch at ODOT, and because of the bad leadership, the first instinct was, well, we got to raise Oregonians' taxes, or we're going to have to fire a bunch of people.
Of course, always. They're always, let's take more and more money. I mean, if it's not tolls, it's fees, I mean, I've got to pay now $10 to get into a beach that I used to take my kid on for free. And this is after just last year, the county closing all the county lands because they have no place to put up the criminals who keep dumping on the county land. It just becomes accumulative over time, and they don't understand. That they tell you it's just a small tax, but they don't know how much we're already paying, or maybe they do and just don't give a damn. So yeah, it's always more money.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I'm sure, Rob, your pockets are endless, and you want to give every last dime that you have in them to the government, right?
Right.
Because government knows best. And so, we No Tax Oregon was birthed out of this idea of let's fight bad tax proposals. But I see it long term being something that creates just unprecedented prosperity in our state. I go back to the founding of Oregon Freedom Coalition, and you look at our homepage there, and it's got the pioneer that's on top of the Oregon Capitol. And I think we miss out on a lot of our history in this state, a lot of our history in the United States writ large. But I think we forget it, our history in this state and who we are as Oregonians. But that pioneer is on top of our capital for a reason. We came here as a pioneering people. I'm not particularly one of those families that, our lineage goes back, almost a century and a half. But I talk to people that, tell me, our family has been in Josephine County for, 150 years. Josephine County is where I live, by the way. Our family has been in Oregon City, came here as pioneers. And when you look back to what those people were coming here for, it was for unprecedented prosperity and opportunity. And we have just gotten so complacent over the last 40, 50 years to where we don't necessarily stand up and fight for those same values and that same idea and that concept of freedom that brought us to this land in the first place. One of the things that Representative Deal has been talking about quite a bit in this whole referendum process is that we were one of the earliest states to implement the initiative petition process and the referendum process, and one of the first states to actually be successful in it. I believe 1902 is the year. And the reason for that was that we had just a severe skepticism of government. This idea that the Oregon's people know what's best for Oregon's people. What a wild concept. You know what's best for you, and I know what's best for me. Not somebody that's off in a distant land in Salem that hails from making decisions in Salem that hails from Portland. Life in Portland is very different than what it is down here in Josephine County. It's very different from what it is, just in Josephine County. It's very different from what it is, where you're at in Coos County there. And it's very different. Both of us, we're probably more alike than we are to Eastern Oregon. And so yeah, there's the idea that legislators should be legislating things that are broadly unpopular for the state in the way that they have been, and not giving say to those who are in other parts of the state is just beyond me. It's ludicrous. It's not democratic, I might say. It's not democracy. So taking it back to No Tax Oregon, because I did mention the referendum, we started fighting this thing during legislative session, when we kind of knew that there was going to be, we did know there was going to be a bad tax increase on the horizon. And so we put together No Tax Oregon, and we did a couple of things. First, we waited. They came out with their framework for the transportation reinvestment package, TRIP. What a lovely name, because they thought it was so cutesy, but really they were going to trip up the Oregon people financially, is how I was saying it at the time. But they put together a TRIP, and it was this framework for what their final bill would look like. And it went through so many different iterations, and there was the versions that, we have the votes, we don't need buy-in from conservatives, we don't need buy-in from Republicans, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden there was, oh, well, hey, look, we actually don't have the votes. So how about we kick you a little bit to try and get you to buy in and vote with us. And thankfully, conservatives stood strong against that. And said no at the time, because there was a lot of bad things in that initial plan, and then the secondary plan that we don't want as a state. And then it was, Governor Kotek was coming in during session at the very end there, trying to bully legislators into voting for the package. You're not going to get what I might line item veto certain projects in your district if you don't vote for this tax increase, that sort of thing. At least that's what we were hearing on the ground at the time. And ultimately it died on the floor, or not on the floor. It died before it got to the floor, at the last dying hours of session there. And so Oregonians were spared, but the whole time Governor Kotek is saying, this is an emergency. This is an emergency. We're going to have to lay people off if we don't get this through. This is an emergency. And they dragged their feet the entire session. They decided not to, come to the table and discuss all options. They just said, no, we got to raise taxes. We've got to, pilfer the pockets of Oregonians. And so when the bill didn't move anywhere, House Bill 2025 didn't move anywhere, the governor said, we've got to call an emergency session. Remember, it's not special session in Oregon. We call it emergency session. And, they set it for 2 months after the end of session, and then had to, for several different complications, I know there were some health issues with a couple of senators. They had to sit on their hands for a month. And it's like, okay, I thought this was an emergency. Right. So why are we not coming back to the table to discuss and negotiate and come out with something that, is good for all Oregonians, that actually treats this like it's an emergency? But they were just unwilling to do that. And so we get at the very end of September the passage of this tax increase, and it's a 6-cent increase in the gas tax. So it raises the gas tax to 46 cents per gallon from 40 cents. It doubles the payroll tax, and it nearly doubles all title and fee increases. The other thing I should say, the 46 cents per gallon is already on top of the federal rate. So you're looking at over 50 cents per gallon. I think close to 60, if not more, cents per gallon. I forget what the federal rate is. It's like 12 cents per gallon right now. Right. But it's this artificial increase of 50 plus per gallon that people have to pay. That's $1, and that's a $0.50 more per gallon. And 6 cents might not sound like a whole lot, but for your average Oregonian that has to commute to work every day, that adds up over time. For businesses.
I mean, you got to put 10 gallons in your car. That's another 60 cents per 10 gallons every couple of days for every individual out there. This is per gallon that we're talking about. And how many gallons are used in one day? I bet you Grok would know. I probably should do that at some point in time. I'll throw that in maybe into the video. So, but yeah, it's crazy. And people don't realize how much money they get from that alone. And you fighting this is really trying to help the people of Oregon, going back to what you were talking about, high income taxes. States that have a high income taxes have lower production rates because of the fact that they're not business friendly. The people I know live off of the businesses they own. And as long as the states are going to continue taxing us and putting the burden on us, the people who are out there trying to create the real job creators. I love when don't you love it when politicians say we're job creators? And it's like, no, you guys haven't ever created a job. Every job you've created sucked up more resources from the free market. So fewer jobs are being created out here where people are actually working to produce something of value. And the more people who are free to produce that value will produce more than they would if that burden was too heavy. Once it's too heavy, people refuse to produce. And you lighten that burden, you get more from people. And that's true with this gas tax. People are going to drive more if they have less tax. In fact, I would say just get rid of the gas tax, go down to 6 cents. Let's start at 6 cents and then we'll talk. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and you're exactly right. I mean, just think about how many businesses, big businesses have left the state over the last couple of years, over the last decade. I know the big one that hurts down here in Southern Oregon is Dutch Brothers leaving. There was a lot of people that were employed by Dutch Brothers corporate headquarters down here, and they had a hard decision to make of do I up and go to Arizona with the company, or do I stay here and look for something else? And a lot of people chose to stay here and look for something else, and that can be scary when there's companies like Dutch Bros and others that are leaving the state, and small businesses aren't doing as well and being squeezed. And so hats off to them for doing that. But think about the ones that left to Arizona with Dutch Brothers, and I know there's been other companies too. But they then took the money that they make to Arizona, and so now they're not spending that money at local businesses. They're not eating at local restaurants here. They're not spending at local stores. They're taking that money to Arizona and spending that money there. So that, we lose a lot of, adjusted gross income from Oregon to Arizona, or, to Tennessee, or to Florida, or wherever it is that people are moving, Idaho, because it's close. One of the best spots to live, we always say is Vancouver, because you don't pay income tax in Washington, and you can go shop in Oregon where there's no sales tax. And it's like, well, it'd be great to make Oregon the place that's the best, place to live everywhere, because, we don't have an income tax, and, we have low business taxes and all these sorts of things. And, to your point on the gas tax, I think one of the frustrating things is that we raised our gas taxes. Salem raised our gas taxes, I should say, in 2017, and there was a lot of people that kind of just said, okay, that's fine. There's going to be some infrastructure projects that get put into place that are going to make it easier to do business, that are going to actually benefit the public at large, and they were okay with it. The flagship projects of that package, where are they? What have they been built? Have they actually happened? No. From what my understanding, one of the flagship projects was the widening of I-5 in the Rose Quarter, and I don't know that construction has started on that. So
I don't even live up there. Yeah, and I don't think that the last time I've been through there, no, there's nothing changed. I haven't seen much changed ever up there.
And it's because there's a whole slew of regulatory stuff that goes into this too, with permitting and there's it's awful. But my thought is, why are we not pitching these projects and being basically to turn the phrase, or not to turn the phrase, to bring up the old phrase, shovel ready? Why are we not set to go on these and going as soon as we can on it? Because what happened with that project is that the cost ballooned to billions of dollars, from what it originally was. And so they still have that on the books as needing funding because the costs have increased. And so that's part of the issue here, is that, there's projects on the books that we've survived without over the last 10 years that, we're still trying to fund and keep funded. And I think, as part of it too, there's a lot of stuff that the ratios are out of balance with what gets spent on capital projects versus what gets, kicked to, road crews and maintenance. And it's like, okay, we could have fixed that balance. Not everybody needs a brand new bridge with, bike paths over the Columbia. I know that's one that they're trying to fund on the I-5 bridge. It's like, okay, who's going to really ride their bike back and forth?
You're not going to believe this. They want to do that here in Bandon. They're talking about taking out the historic Bullards Bridge to put in one with a bike lane. And the bikes don't pay a damn thing for this stuff. This is so unfair for us.
Yeah. And it's just a lot of waste. It's in projects and, the green stuff and the DEI, and there's just things that infiltrate these agencies that just push it off of its core mission of, connecting Oregonians, via good solid roads. And so that was the plea of a lot of conservatives and Republicans during session was, let's negotiate on this. And they were unwilling to. And so you get the passage of the gas tax increases at the end of September. And to kind of walk you through what we're doing with No Tax Oregon, during that regular session, we spent we how to phrase this, we did digital ads during that time that
Mhm.
said, hey, we built No Tax Oregon. We spent digital ads targeting people that were in 15 key districts of folks that we thought might be willing to kind of go against the grain and vote against this. And it was a bipartisan list of 15 districts in the House. And we targeted folks in those districts with the messaging of, this is devastating for working families. Click into No Tax Oregon, fill out this form, and it'll email your representative saying, please don't vote for this. And, it was very pared down. It was very simplistic. It auto-generated the message for people based on, kind of where they lived. And, so it was a low barrier. And that's important because we got 10,000 people to submit, emails to their legislator through this.
That's pretty
Now, it
good.
wasn't
That's
just,
pretty damn good.
well, it gets even better. Thank you. First off, it gets even better when I tell you that it wasn't just 10,000 people that are, actively engaged. It wasn't just your traditional conservative grassroots base. This was 10,000 people that we targeted based on data that showed us that they were low propensity conservative leaning voters, or just low propensity voters that wouldn't like this sort of thing, that don't usually engage in politics. So that was 10,000 people activated from previously being inactive in the political process. Now, we have retooled, and that's some of the approach that we want to take as Oregon Freedom Coalition, reactivating low propensity voters to re-engage in the system, because that's really, I heard there was, by some counts of our data, there's about 300,000 conservative leaning folks in the state that just don't turn out to vote. They're low propensity voters is what we call that. And so that was what we did during session, and we kind of followed that up in the emergency session. But really, we knew what the outcome was going to be from all our intel on the ground, that this thing was going to pass and that we were going to have to fight it on the back end. And that's where we get to with this referendum. And the basic message is, it's your wallet. It should be your vote. It should be your
Right.
voice. So what we're doing with this is that we are in charge of organizing the volunteer effort to help collect signatures. And the way that we're doing that is through No Tax Oregon, notaxor.com. We've got this form at the top, and it's very, very simple. You just put your name, your zip code, I think your city, maybe a few other things. But you can hit submit, and it just tells us that you're interested in signing this petition. You're interested in having a voice on this measure. The other piece that it lets us do is it lets us know if you're interested in volunteering. So there's like 4 check boxes. There's like, do you want to help knock doors? Do you want to help, gather signatures? Do you want to host an event? And then do you want to be a petition captain? And right now, the way that we're doing this is that we've got petition captains for each of the counties, that they're going to be in charge of helping to organize volunteers and making sure that we have a good grassroots engagement effort that's well coordinated and isn't really as decentralized as we've seen some of the petition gathering or the signature gathering efforts in the past. So one of the large problems is that there's, when's the last time we were successful with a petition, getting it on the ballot and everything? There's that point.
Right.
But the other piece is that, the reason for that, I think, has largely been because there's a disjointed, decentralized effort. And so we're doing our best to make sure that we keep tabs on where petitions are being circulated, if not through, kind of our leadership and our grassroots director, then through our petition captains. And so that way there's a level of accountability there that says, oh, hey, we've got a goal of X number of signatures in Coos County. And, we've actually, we're right up to that. We're about 100 short. And so we can make the extra push to see, are there signatures out there that, we've got 10 sheets that, just haven't been turned in yet. And
Right.
we can go and we can collect those. Or, we say, hey, we need to make a targeted effort to collect them on this part of the county, or that sort of thing. And so it really helps us make sure that we're meeting our goals in each of the counties, each of the cities too. Because there's some places, like Clackamas County is one where we've got like 5 different cities that we've got to kind of target. So yeah, there's a centralization effort, and to briefly just get into the urgency for this,
Yes.
we have about 30 days to gather 100,000 signatures.
And explain why. And the hilarity of this is that you have a governor who represents a party who decries the Republicans or anyone who does anything to stand up for the Constitution if it delays elections, the validity of elections, as destroying democracy. They're destroying democracy, and yet this governor is refusing to sign this bill into law so we can put it up for a vote, which I mean is just the hypocrisy is just incredible. So yeah, please continue with that.
Yeah, to your point, it's projection. I am what I say you are. And it's yeah, you're absolutely right. There's, we're trying to do what we can to make sure that Oregonians have a voice on this. I know there was last minute amendments to try and get this referred to the ballot through the legislative process, and that was shot down frequently. And I find, I mentioned it over and over again, the idea that we call it an emergency session, the idea that this has been an emergency, that it's an emergency, and every step of the way. But there's been delay after delay after delay after delay. And I'd ask, has anybody been laid off in this process? like the governor keeps threatening?
Right.
Not one that I know of. They've always
have the money
found a way to extend it. And I think it's a bold-faced lie that there has to be people laid off if this doesn't happen. If this gas tax increase doesn't happen. I think it's a bold-faced lie because they know that they can find ways to keep people employed. And so, I think, so the urgency of this is that in Oregon's Constitution, it gives us 90 days from sine die of a session to refer a bill to the ballot. So essentially what that means is that from the end of session, you had the bill passed on the 29th of September. End of session was 2 days later on the 1st of October, meaning that our day 1 of 90 was October 2nd, and our day 90 of 90 is December 30th. 3-month window. Rob, I'll tell you, we haven't gathered one signature yet.
Right.
And you could go, what, not one signature? And I'd say, yeah, well, it's because the gamesmanship that is happening with this is just astounding. The governor has 30 business days to sign that bill into law. Not 30 days, not putting us at the end of October, 30 business days. November 12th is the last day that the governor has to sign this bill into law. And the reason that matters is that we cannot gather a single signature on this referendum until the governor signs that bill and it is processed into law. That does not reset. That does not reset our 90-day clock. Our 90-day clock is still regardless of what happens when she signs it, that 90 days hits on December 30th. So you figure we expect her to sign it November 12th or somewhere around then. You figure it's going to take about 3 business days for the Secretary of State's office to do the proper processing and whatnot, meaning that the earliest we anticipate being able to gather signatures is by some miracle Saturday, November 15th. Likely it will be the following Tuesday because the 12th is on a Wednesday. Right. 3 business days later would be, that final day being the Monday. And then we would probably be at earliest able to gather on Tuesday, the 18th. So we're looking at continue on that path for a second. When you do the math and the timeline, that is like day 45 of 90 that we can start gathering signatures. Plus, you have to throw in the time frame of there's these little things called Thanksgiving and Christmas. Yeah. That kind of get, it's a blessing and a curse and all that, because you've got some people that you've got you can gather signatures in high trafficked areas like malls and stores and whatnot during that time. But you also lose about a week. You
Right.
lose somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15 days in that. So what the line we have been going with is that we have 30 days to gather 100,000 signatures. And 100,000, I should say, is an overshoot. It is roughly 80,000 that we need valid to qualify this for being referred to the ballot. You figure if we gather 100,000, we have a really good chance of hitting that mark of 80,000. And I think they're doing this strategically because I don't think they believe we can get the 100,000 that we need, or the 80,000 valid within those 30 days. But Rob, I'll tell you, we have had such a massive effort and movement come together, a massive outpouring of, hey, I want to be involved in this and that sort of thing. We have had over 15,000. Gosh, this was as of yesterday when I checked it. It's probably closer to 16,000 people say yes, I want to sign this petition when it becomes available. And that's not, we haven't done a single digital ad for this. We have not done anything beyond just having our allies share this on social media. So we've gotten, who knows how many eyeballs on it, but we've gotten 15,000 submissions, almost 16,000 submissions from that. That's amazing.
Right.
That's all. I would say it's unprecedented, but that's just because I don't know if there's anything else that's been that effective like that.
I was on a phone call with you. That phone call you did that was statewide with the gentleman from Oregon, Tex.
Jason Williams.
I've known Jason for a long damn time, and he's a really good guy, and he's been doing that for a long time. I need to get him on the show. He's quite the character. And so you did this call and from what I could tell, there was like 400 people on that phone call. That was impressive.
Yes, and I will say that was a narrowed down group of people that were on that because that call was specifically geared towards our volunteers, of which there are over 2,500 people telling us they want to volunteer, which is just insane. So yeah, to your point, to have that, over 400, I think it was close to 500 at one point on that call is outstanding. There are a lot of people that are just ticked off about this, and people that don't, like I said, don't usually engage in politics that are mad about this, that that Oregonians don't get a voice on this, that want to help us in this effort. So yeah, that's the nice thing I think about having 45 days before we can start gathering signatures, is that the other side thinks that it's going to be only 30 days and there's no way we can get that 100,000 signatures, all that sort of thing. But what they don't realize is that it's 45 days that we have to develop and organize a professional volunteer effort that I think is going to be a kick in the teeth, to be quite frank. I think they don't expect us to be successful, and I am just the outpouring I've seen. I'm pretty optimistic about it.
The reception we have gotten so far for the people waiting for this petition to go out is because we got two initiatives out there, and I want you to explain this if you have time, right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. I want you to explain the difference between the initiative and the referendum process, because, and maybe with the recall, because we just had the Governor Kotek recall, which the bar for that is much, much higher than a referendum. An initiative is a little bit higher than a referendum as well, but the time limits are different, and people are really confused about that. And I think you probably understand that as well as anyone, because you've been up in the legislature and seen this process several times. So would you explain it?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to consult my my tool for this. It's if you don't mind here. So you go to Ballotpedia. Ballotpedia has a good I should type in the right words here. So if you go to Ballotpedia has just a great breakdown of the laws governing, ballot measures and signature petitions and all sorts of things. And the key element of this is that they break out what the signature thresholds and requirements are based on Oregon State. These on the ballot. I'm gonna say so. There's a couple different ways that things can end up to the ballots, and there's several different types of petitions that can be circulated out there. So for Oregon specifically, we have, like I said, a couple different categories. We've got initiative petitions that are designed for, just straight up statutory changes. So that's things like, if we wanted to, try to think of something, if we wanted to pass a law that said, change the tax rate on something. If we wanted to pass something that changed the tax rate, as long as it wasn't enshrined in the Constitution, we just wanted to straight up change the statutory language around a tax, around a tax rate. We could put together an initiative petition process that has a threshold that is, a little bit higher than the threshold for the referendum.
Right.
And we would have to gather, I think it's around 8%. I'd have to fact check that, and it wasn't pulling up easy on my computer here. So, but we'd have to gather that number, and then you have a constitutional change where if we said we want to constitutionally pass an amendment that eliminates the income tax, that's my goal, right? We wanted to pass that, we would have to gather a higher threshold, a higher percentage of votes, and it's percentage based off of the most recent turnout in the most recent governor's election. So looking back at 2022, it's a percentage of that turnout. And then you can also get something referred based on the legislature referring it. So that happened with ranked choice voting last year. The legislature passed this bill to get ranked choice voting put into place, and they referred it to the ballot. Thankfully, we shot that down, I might add. But the other one is the recall effort. So I think that has a pretty high threshold. And then the referendum process, which is what we are doing. We are doing the referendum process. It has a much lower threshold than the other three categories. And the reason for that is that it is to give Oregonians a voice on past legislation that the legislature has not automatically referred to the ballot. And it's because the time frame is so much more narrow. It's, hypothetically 3 months if everything happens right out of the gate. In our case, it's 1 month. So our threshold is 4% of the most recent turnout, which puts you just below 80,000 signatures, which, like I said, in order to make sure that everything is validated and the signatures match as they should, 100,000 is our goal. Now,
which is pretty low. That's really low, Nick. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be like 150 at least. And when I heard it was, when you just said that 100,000, that's surprise. 80,000 actually, and then you're going to need 100 for qualification. Yeah. Well, and you look at like the constitutional amendment, because earlier this year I was looking into, potentially an initiative to get a constitutional change that says Oregonians Oregonians automatically get a voice on tax increases. So if the legislature can get their supermajority to vote, I think it's the 2/3 in the legislature to pass a tax increase. So the way that would work is if you get the 2/3 majority in both chambers to, increase taxes, it automatically gets referred to the voters, regardless of what it is, if it's a tax increase. That way the voters have a say in this. And that's modeled off of other things that I've seen in other states with tax expenditure limits, things like the Taxpayer Bill of Rights in Colorado, which we have a version of that with the kicker. And the kicker is great, but it's been neutered a lot over the last couple decades. And there's a lot of ways that I think that we can improve it as well.
that's a whole separate tangent. I'd love to come back and talk about that at some point in time.
That would be cool. If you're going to be doing things like that, then I think we have a good apparatus, political apparatus we're building here that would love to work parallel with all of that stuff, campaigning with you, because that just ties into our endeavors. We just fought against those damn wind turbines down here, and we were going to lose, even though the people voted 60% against it here in Coos County. 80% of the people voted against it in Curry County, and yet they were going to do it. And the thank goodness for Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Thank goodness for Donald Trump. He came in and killed it. But that's the kinds of things that you have to do locally. And so I was very appreciative that doing it on a statewide level. I've done initiatives, I've done referendums and recalls on a countywide level, but to do it on a statewide level, I don't think people know the logistical workings of just getting that out there, just getting pop-up booths. You know what I mean? You got to know when and where they're going to happen, who's going to be scheduling this. If you got to write copies, you got to have the right copies of the petition. You know what I mean? It's a very meticulous job, and people don't realize you're pretty much, this is going to be your life for the next couple of while.
This has been my life for the last, this has been my life for the last 23 days or so, and it's been crazy. And I love it. I live for these sorts of fights. One of the things I love about being in the nonprofit space for for politics and whatnot, and having been in that space for the last couple of years, is that, as opposed to being like an elected official or being a contract lobbyist or things like that, is that you can do a lot of good in those capacities. But when you work in the nonprofit space, especially with what we're doing with Oregon Freedom, is that I have a lot of control to suss out what policy positions match our principles. I am so much a conservative movement guy, and so much a principled policy guy. Like I said, I'm a tax purist. I believe in no income tax. That you can't always fight that. You can't always fight for that as a legislator or as a contract lobbyist, or you might believe in that sort of thing, but there's other things and other votes and ways you got to work in order to move in that direction that aren't as purist as I would say with let's just no income tax, rah rah rah, that sort of thing. So that's what I love with this, is that we get the opportunity to pick up projects and policy positions based on our principles at the Oregon Freedom Network. And this is just one of them. And so working on things like that, working on things like this, working on things like what I just described with the, maybe some of the tax expenditure limitation reforms in the future. That is what I live and breathe. And so I'm so happy to be doing this. And it's stressful in so many ways. And one of the things too I should add is the coalition piece. I think really what our design and our intention is to be like a group that brings everybody together in this effort. So while I'm talking about this, and I can be principled, that I can run in these races, I can run in one direction. I want to do the best I can to be kind of a leader that brings everybody along with me, to make sure we're all moving in the same direction. And I funneled towards the same tunnel, I guess, more or less, rather than shooting off in one direction to do this, or shooting off in another direction to do that, or hey, we don't like this, so we're gonna stay out of it. We're gonna actually do this thing for it instead. Sometimes it's just as simple as let's get everybody talking, let's have these conversations. And so I think we've been able to do that with this effort, with the partners that we have, like Jason Williams, who is a chief petitioner on it, with Senator Bruce Starr, with Representative Deal, and some of the other people who have just come to the table to have these conversations about how can we move this forward in a coordinated effort. And I envision that for a lot more policy stuff in this state, to really restore that freedom and prosperity like we've been talking about. And I think it's going to bear fruit. I really do. And I've seen other efforts in other states where just setting the table for people to work in the same direction and not step on each other's toes, not help sometimes you have to navigate different, policy differences and political differences. And,
Right.
so-and-so doesn't really like such, somebody over here, but hey, we're going to come to the same table and move in the same direction because we agree on this issue. And that's coming together in this, and I love it, and I'm excited, and I'm here for that. That's
Yeah.
what we wanted to build.
And that's why I love running on the issues, because most people, when you have a good issue, you'll find 70 and higher plus in my area. And I'm sure yours, Josephine, as well, because it's a red county. You'll find people are almost majority on your side. So I love running those issues because they're very positive, and it's better than the campaigning. Campaigning is just really tough with a candidate for many different multiple reasons, but an issue is very clear cut. It's the one issue that you're running on. And I do have a couple of questions that people are always asking me about this when it happens. And one is, it was an emergency, from what I understand, and you've stated this, to have the emergency session. They had to declare an emergency to do the emergency session, yet they didn't put an emergency clause in the bill. And I remember what happened, but can you relay that story and explain it to people? Because that's one of the questions I always get, because they're always asking, why are we able to put this one up for a referendum, but not all the others? And I would like you to explain it, and I'm going to put it on a recording and then loop it when I'm doing the petition, because that's what everyone's going to ask, those kinds of questions.
Yeah, have it blasting out of the speakers there. Yeah, so it's very simple. They use the emergency clause during session to, like you said, to make sure we do not have a voice on some of these bad bills. And you could probably need to be fact checked, but I'm pretty sure that things like the unemployment benefits for striking workers bill, nobody really asked for that. I'd almost guarantee it has an emergency clause.
Yeah.
And I probably need to be fact checked on that. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry to whoever wants to fact check.
Oh, I'd be willing to bet. I'd be willing to bet on it.
I would too. And they do this because they understand that some of these bills are, like you said, they're in the minority on whether or not these are favored, because a lot of these bills are union favors in the legislature, and they understand that the union favors are not always favored by the people. So there is one type of legislation that is ineligible for the emergency clause, and it's tax bills. So they cannot put an emergency clause on this bill. Thank God, it's our saving grace, right? Otherwise, I guarantee you that it would have been something that they would have attached to it. But because they legally cannot attach the emergency clause to this bill, we have the opportunity to refer this to the ballot. And I know there's been a lot of talk about reforming the emergency clause writ large, and I think it's probably needed. I'm not sure. I know there's been some discussion on how to go about that per se, and I'm not going to weigh in on that, but I think that yes, we do need an opportunity to be able to comment on or to give our voice on some of these issues.
Oh yeah.
But thank God we have the opportunity to speak on these tax issues, because it is legally a requirement that they cannot put that clause on there. So yeah, that's why that is the case.
Okay. And that like I said, that will be asked. And of course, this is one of the always my favorite questions. And I always look at them and go, how would I know? I'm gathering the signatures. They always ask this question. How many signatures do you have? How far do we have to go? How many signatures do you have to get? And you're looking at them going, I'm gathering signatures, buddy. There's no way of knowing. And would you explain the process of gathering signatures, how it goes to your headquarters, how most people are going to drive it up there? I know we've got actual physical carriers who are willing to take it to the chief petitioner,
Yes, and so our chief petitioner is Jody Fleck. She's our grassroots. Well, she's not the chief petitioner. I should say, she is not the chief petitioner. She is the grassroots director for Oregon Freedom. She's the one that's helping to coordinate the chief petition, or not the chief petitioners. Gosh, I keep saying that, stumbling over it. The petition captains who are organizing the volunteers in their jurisdictions. And Jody is the person that we're actually sending the petitions to, the petition sheets to, once they have been, signed by, 10 people if it's a 10-person sheet, and verified and signed by the petition gatherer, all that sort of thing. So we are directing them to Jody, and we're going to have a system that we're still working out some of the finer details on this, but we're close to having it in place to where we can actually do some verification of these signatures using technology. So that way we can have a near accurate accounting of how many signatures we have at any given time. So that way we can say, things like, hey, Coos County, you guys are behind. How about we work to host an event in Bandon? Or how about, hey, there's an event going on at the fairgrounds of Josephine, and Josephine needs, a little bit of boost, or Josephine's met their goal and we know we can get more in Josephine. So let's go make sure we're tabling down at that event while, some other volunteers are doing an event elsewhere. So we should have a close to real time, as close as we can, accounting of what the signature total is. And yeah, that's the sort of it. Did I leave any part of that answer out?
No, that's actually much better than I thought. You answered both of those questions that I asked. I'm glad I asked, because I thought it was a different reason for the emergency clause, and I'm glad you explained what happened and the whole thing. That you're using technology to be able to verify them before you send them in, to make sure you have the count, and then not only the count for going into the Secretary of State, but the count that if anyone asks you, you can give them an estimation of where you're at. It's, I mean, I've got probably about 5,000 signatures for the no toll roads and the end vote by mail sitting right here on my, and that's the coolest thing. You've got, you get a couple of thousand signatures and you realize that you've spent that much time gathering signatures, and you had those people that stopped to give you their names. It's a very powerful feeling, and anyone who wants to get involved, I think that's the best grassroots thing to get involved with, because the people who are showing up to your pop-up tent, they want to be there, they want to sign it, and they're all thanking you. Thank you for being here and signing this and getting this petition signatures, all organized and stuff. We had one lady go out and she got like 6 pages for us in one day. It was mind blowing.
Well, and that brings me back to another point I was going to make. So with the timeline of this, we are going to be pushing a Sign Across Oregon Day, where likely the first Saturday that we are eligible to, that we are able to gather signatures, we will be pushing our petition captains and their volunteers to host events in. And this is a crazy number. So we've got 36 counties, but we've got about 240 different localities in the state of Oregon that we have at least one volunteer from. So we're pushing our volunteers in the 240 different locations to work with businesses in their locality to help host a local event for this Sign Across Oregon Day, because we're shooting for something like 20,000 signatures just on that day alone. And, I think if we get even, close to that 240 people or 240 events across the state, there's a high likelihood that we could blow that number of 20,000 signatures in one day out of the water. Beyond that, if you do the math with the number of volunteers that we have, it's, gosh, I think this is a little bit outdated. So I think it's actually just 40 signatures. But at one point, when we first did the math, it was just 50, 5 sheets per person, 50 signatures. I think it's now up to 2,500 volunteers. You figure if each volunteer gets 40 signatures, then we are sitting golden with that 100,000 number. And we're sitting even better with that 80,000 we're supposed to get. So this is very much a doable effort. And I encourage, if you're listening to this, hit that 40 threshold. And I'd encourage you double it.
Yeah.
when you get to it, go out to collect 80 signatures, and then once you get 80, double that, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I'm very optimistic that we will be able to, with how we've centralized this and how we're organizing it, that we will be able to meet that threshold to refer to the ballot.
So this is the plan. This is your continuation. If you get other good initiatives out there or referendums, that's what you intend to use your coalition to work for. Is that pretty much the main intent of what's going on?
Yeah, that's to be determined
Okay.
in the future. So
Okay.
I think it's really dependent on what the petition is. We're not necessarily looking to take an existing petition and swoop in and be the organizing effort behind it.
Yeah.
Really, what we're looking to do is, if we do have something that is a policy goal of ours that we want to help push, or that we want to push in the future, typically our apparatus is going to be organized through something that kind of does originate with us. And that's just for the sake of, we don't want to step on the toes of other organizations. I know that, Jason Williams is working on, some signature petitions, or some initiative petitions of his own, that, we don't want to take the limelight and glory for that, because that's Jason's. We'll help
Right.
whatever we might be able to, as long as we, and I doubt we disagree on the policy points of that, but we are looking to primarily put our apparatus behind stuff that we roll out, and it'll be a coordinated effort with our partners. So with folks like Taxpayers Association, with Freedom Foundation, anybody that really wants to partner with us on these efforts, then heck yeah, we're going to partner with them.
Good to hear. Well, thank you for coming on the show and doing the interview. I really enjoyed it. Before I get you out of here, is there anything you want to tell the folks?
Yeah. If you haven't already, go to notaxor.com, fill out that form. It's, like I said, it's that form specifically is to let us know that you're interested in signing the petition. There will be a little donation thing that pops up afterwards. You're not obligated to donate, and know that donation is for the long-term effort of no tax in Oregon. So it's not just the gas tax that it's going towards, but it is for long-term tax reform. And I think with some of the things we've seen over the last year or two in this state, and some of the things that I've seen come out of voters and people on the ground, I think the state is ripe for turning around. We are ripe for, pushing towards that freedom and prosperity that our ancestors came to this land for to begin with.
I think if we stay on these type of fiscal issues, that it affects everyone. It affects everyone. Everyone has a grandmother or a great grandmother who's struggling to get by right now, and they know families that are just struggling to get by, and they are tired of the government just squeezing us dry. And I see it all over the place. No matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, everyone suffers this. And so that is going to be the best way to not only get these issues back on the right side, get the taxes lowered by changing the policy, but eventually it will translate to, I think, better candidates getting into office. And,
Exactly.
It should be a good thing. Well, thank you very much, man. We'll get you back on again.
Yeah.
Hold on.
All right. And that was my interview with Nich Stark. Thank you, Nich. We appreciate it. Baldy and I appreciate it. And Danessa, I got to give Danessa credit, man. She really furnished this place quite well. That's where Baldy came from. And we're very patriotic. So we got things like the beautiful bald eagle. We got Trump signs. We've got American flags. Gee, I think we got quite a few American flags around here. And so, yeah, we're very patriotic. Yes. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I need a ring girl. But a ring guy. There you go. There you go. There are Trump Vance signs.
We're trying to be
You guys aren't very good at this. All right, there you
We're
go.
trying to be coordinated.
Very good. Very good. We like that. We like that. So if you want to sign the petition, you can come out here. If you haven't signed the vote before the tolls because we don't want tolls, we don't want trolls, we don't want any of that on our highway. The tolling, they want to toll the roads that we already paid for. We already pay a gas tax, and they've just passed a law that we're going to repeal. And then we got the end vote by mail. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. We need more of that. So end vote by mail, and vote before the tolls, and vote for before the trolls too. We don't want tolls. We don't want trolls. So you can sign both of those here at the headquarters at 3229 Broadway. And that's at the corner of Broadway and Newmark. We're right behind the McDonald's. If you know where the McDonald's is on Broadway and Newmark, you know where Vinny's is, and then there's an ice cream store, and then right next to the ice cream store is McDonald's. We're just catty corner behind the McDonald's. Come on out here and sign the petitions. We need as much help as we can get. This was hilarious. I thought I'd put this on stage. You know, I don't want to say that the Democrats they love to exaggerate things. This right here was from New Jersey. It's a post from New Jersey where somebody who lives in Bandon but is from New Jersey was claiming that there were over 600 protesters in Bandon at the No Kings protest this past Friday or this past Saturday. And I can tell you right now, I was there. I was there, and there was no way there were 600 people. 120 tops, and that's even pushing it. So if you see this kind of garbage on the internet, it's garbage. It's, what can I tell you? All right, there we go. Very patriotic. Very patriotic. We're going to get some beautiful signs back here. We got a couple of great big white walls. We're going to get some beautiful murals up there. So yep, that was interesting. I thought I'd show you that. And of course, here's the websites that you can go to. The recall to Kotek, that's pretty much over with, but there's the website. End vote by mail. We vote before tolls, and No Tax Oregon. All of those are still up and going. The No Tax Oregon hasn't come out yet. We'll get that here soon, and I can guarantee you all of you are going to want to be out here to sign that. Very, very good stuff. Before I get out of here, I got to give kudos to my sponsors, 3H Tree Service. You can call them at 541-294-1800. You got some problem trees. They got branches that look like they're going to fall. They're liability. They're hanging over your eaves. They're hanging over your neighbor's garage. Well, call 3H Tree Service. They'll come out there. They'll take out those trees and they'll remove them with surgical precision and leave a nice clean yard at 541-294-1800. 3H Tree Service. My other sponsor is Tom and Gigs. I just saw Tim and Shanna over there, and it was funny. Shanna just sent me our local pedophile. I don't want to mention his name, give him any credit, but our local pedophile was doing a boycott against Tom and Gigs. Why? Because they sponsor this show. They love America. They fly American flags. So we got to protest them. That's what the left says. And I say, no, we don't want to boycott them, because we don't boycott people on the left. We don't boycott any businesses. We think all businesses should thrive if they have good service, they sell good products. Well, I can guarantee you, Tom and Gigs, they do both of those things. They give great service and they sell excellent products. You can go down there, you can get shocks, you can get struts, you can get alignments, tonneau covers. They have it all. 135 South Shoneman Street in the Empire neighborhood, right behind the car wash, and you can reach them at 541-888-4660. And they've got a lot of stuff out there. Lift kits, performance accessories. There they are right there, Tom and Gigs. And oh, darn it, I forgot to remove that photo. Don't worry, you could probably order that if you want to catch surf with the remote control surf guy. Yeah, that's a heck of a guy. And they got a lot of different vehicles there. Beautiful stuff. They got planes. They got planes too. And of course, they got Hero Copters, and they have Tannerite. Tannerite for all your Tannerite needs. But remember, you must be 18 years old or older to purchase Tannerite. And let's see. I also have Herbal Choices for all your herbal needs. And they've got a sale coming up for Halloween. I'm not sure exactly what's on sale. I didn't get the list yet, but I know every Halloween they have a sale. So please check that out. You can go to theherbalchoices.com website and find out more. And remember, you have to be 21 years or older to be in the Herbal Choices store, and they will check your ID. And you can find them at Charleston, Coos Bay, Bandon, Reedsport, or North Bend. Let's see. Abstinence. I figured if I was going to push marijuana, I might as well push abstinence too, because I want to encourage all of you. The only way you can practice virtue is from abstaining from vice. If you abstain from vice, you can find virtue. And that's something that we're going to do a little bit more of this. I'm coming up with a game, the abstain game, and we're going to base it on the 7 daily sins and see what you're willing to give up. What vice are you willing to abstain from to find the virtue that you seek, and that's something I want to encourage everyone to do. I mean, Marty, what you need to abstain, I'm sure, from something. I don't know what yet.
Is this a voluntary thing?
Yeah, it's a voluntary thing.
As opposed to things I'm abstaining from because
I
I just can't
I know.
or do them anymore.
Well, I was thinking of making a monetary thing, and give out prizes, but then gambling would be part of the thing. So I and I'm abstaining from gambling. So
yeah, this abstaining brought to you by FanDuel.com.
Yeah, exactly. It's hookers and blow not included. Oregon Firearms Federation. I just talked to Kevin Sterrett not too long ago, and I'll tell you what, they've got a hell of a fight on their hands. If you can help them out, Oregon Firearms Federation is the only no compromise gun group in Oregon. Sign up for the newsletter. His last newsletter was great. He talks about Christine Drazen. She just signed up for governor. He knew that. We all knew that was coming. We could smell by the tell. Or tell by the smell. One of those two things. Both are true. And so the OregonFirearms.org, if you want to go and sign up for his newsletter, he is very astute at nailing the local politics in Oregon. And of course, Band and Gun Club, they're not my sponsors, but I highly recommend bandandgunclub.org to hone in your firearm skills. And you can go to Taiga Sports Park at taigasportspark.org.
And one extra mention.
Oh, yeah. And you also can sign the petition.
That's right. For all the people, okay, we're going to be doing the petitions here in Coos Bay, North Bend, 3 days a week for 4 hours at a shot. But in Banton, at the gun store, just south of town, right next to Herbal Choices, they're going to be gathering signatures for anything we got, any petitions we got going. They're more than happy. So check out Six's River Armory, and that's in Bandon, just south of
Herbal Choices. Yeah, it's just south of the store. I'm going to go over there, but once I visit Herbal Choices, everything goes to hell.
Yeah, go to the Armory first.
Go to the Armory first, then go to
then
Herbal
you can
Choices.
choose your vice.
Then you can choose your vice. So yeah, and then you can abstain from something. Coos County Neighborhood Watch. I got to send a shout out to Samuel Adams out there. The man, he should be driving the Batmobile. He should be wearing a cape. He should wear his underwear on the outside of his pants because that's how badass he is. Go to Neighborhood Watch and check out a lot of the footage that him and Chris Castleman have been putting together on these squatters out there and these burglars. It's intense, and I'm sure you will find out more Wednesday on the Coos County Citizen Council. That's Wednesday at 6:00. Go to their website and you'll find out more about what they're doing. I'm sure they can take care of all that. This Friday, we are going to have a Friday night rant. I promise you. This last Friday, I was celebrating a family member's birthday. You got to do that from time to time. So what can I tell you? It was either that or get a divorce, and I'm just too cheap for a divorce. What can I tell you? And so I want to thank all of you for joining me. I appreciate all the questions you had. There it is. I couldn't hear it. There we go. Okay. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Tune in this next Monday. I'm working on a really special guest. I'm trying to get Enrique Tario on here. He might be coming to Portland, folks. This could be really cool. If he shows up, we're going to head up to Portland and we'll do a little interview up there. We'll talk to Enrique, but a lot of things coming down the pike. So it should be pretty fun happening on this Friday, the Friday night rant, and coming up Monday. I should have a really good guest for you. And until then, folks, you know what I always say. Carry on, Coos County. Carry on. What can I say? I can't work my own.